Hello guys, here is a 20-inch GE Bucks fan. Let's take a look at the informations. Here they are. If you could read them, okay. This is a category number F12W22. 110, 120 volts, 60 cycles. It's also made for 110 volts, 50 cycles, and 3.0 amps, which is very expensive to run. Made in USA. Probably has a lot to do why it still works. I got this fan from an antique store for $15, and I could not pass it up. It was just in too good of condition for me to pass up for the low price. Cabinet is not flawless, but very good condition still. In fact, it still has some luster left, so you can see my hand right through it. Not right through it. It takes some effort, but you know, with the right amount of light, you could clearly see. And still has the original badge on the grill. The blade is not busted up at all. Because a handful of times you see these with a broken blade, which is very unfortunate because those are not very easy to 3D print. So, yeah, I just could not pass it up. Handle, unfortunately, is gone, but that shouldn't be too hard to 3D print. Let's take a look at the back. Oh, this is a pretty heavy fan. This is the motor that it has, which I have been told these motors are 100% unserviceable, and they don't have oil ports, which, I mean, is like my only gripe with these fans. These really should have had oil ports. So, yeah. And another failure point that these often have is the cord by the strain relief usually is split apart. This one, I suppose, is splitting apart a little bit, but it's approaching it. I probably should correct it because it is starting to get into the bare insulation on the wire, which, oh my god, we gotta throw it out because it can short out. Or we can just handle the fan carefully and then do that repair later on, which is exactly what I'm going to do. Don't toss anything out half the time or more than half the time. It's still perfectly good. Another thing I wanted to make here is, or point out, is there's some people out there that debate whether this bag thing that covers the internals of the switch is original or not. It is. And while I'm not a huge fan of it, it is actually a way, or a pretty cheap way, to hide the connection so that it's more sightly to the average person. In my opinion, this looks a little bit on the ghetto side. I wish it was like a separate switch box for this, but I'll respect it because these fans were not super duper expensive. I don't know how much these costed when they were new, but I could imagine that the price wasn't terrible. So yeah, it still has the original cord. The original plug is still in good shape. And yeah, this cord is not broken. So yeah, other than correcting this later on, this cord is still perfectly good. Now, I do have a dark brown version of this fan somewhere, and that one just had a repair where they just ripped out the entire cord and just put a very short wire with a plug, which is not correct in the slightest, because you would need a really long extension cord. But what I did is I just took a cord that I had lying around and used that to make the splicey connection into the wire, tied a knot into the wire, and then put a zip tie that matches the cord, just so that it can't be pushed into the blades, because I mean, you don't want to do it to a metal blade because obviously it'll cut the wire and make crazy sparks, but if you do it to a plastic blade, the blade will just break. And as I said before, having to 3D print a new blade would suck. Or I have never, other than the Lasco fan blades, I have never 3D printed a blade on a 3D printer. But I could imagine making the designs is not easy because it takes a lot of geometry and all that stuff. So anyway, I'm going to go ahead and plug it in to the power meter. No, I don't want you on yet. So we're testing it on 118 volts. Okay, it's at 0 watts now. Now we can turn it on. Start off on low. This has a pretty good startup sound as well. This low speed has a very nice hum to it, and I think it's because the motor is shaded pull. I have a love-hate relationship with shaded pull motors. In one hand, they're very reliable and they plain work. And some of them, like this one, create a nice hum and it helps you fall asleep. But on the other hand, they're extremely energy inefficient, so you have to be selective when you run them. So this is low speed, and let's take a feet per minute test if my anemometer will work. Only a couple more videos left to use this cheesy anemometer. Okay, we'll go with 472 feet per minute. And just an FYI, I did buy a new anemometer as well that has a different design than this because I find this anemometer likes to slack off sometimes. So I bought a new one just so that it doesn't slack off. So let's see here. This thing is drawing 126 watts, which is outrageous. 1.83 amps. Not very energy efficient, but the motor is shaded pull, so what do you expect? Let's turn to medium. And then it gets a little bit louder. Let's take another feet per minute test. Go with 820. We'll go with 846. And the power draw on this is 174 watts and 2.36 amps. So the ampage, the power consumption is very, very high, especially for medium, but this thing is really pushing out some very solid air. And I'll turn it to high. And let's do another feet per minute test. Go with 1004, or I should say 1004 feet per minute. Yeah, 1004 I think is what we're going to go with. This is drawing 232 watts, 3.04 amps. It draws a little bit more ampage than what it claims on the information tag, but I think this motor was designed to do 110 volts instead of 120, so we got to expect a little bit more power draw since we're testing it on a higher voltage reading than when it was intended to run on. Usually in my area, we don't get 116 volts. Usually it even pushes up to 130 sometimes. So yeah, it's drawing a little bit more ampage than it was claimed to be, but I don't think it's to a point where it's a concern because, as I said, this motor was designed to be 110 volts, not 120. So that extra like 5 or 10 volts really does affect the ampage a little bit. But it's not to a level where I think it's concerning. I think this will run just fine on 120 volts. And now off. And another problem that these tend to have is the blades get out of balance. But you got to realize that the blade balancing technology wasn't a super big thing back in the 60s when this was made. This, to be exact, I think is a 1967 to 69 model. I don't know where the date would be encrypted, but this, I have been told, is from 1967 to 69. And then in 1970, I think they switched to the dark brown design, which would look perfect in a paneled room. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thank you guys for watching. Bye.